Marhaba, and welcome to the Matrix Green Pill, where real people connect.
Hello and welcome back to the Matrix Green Pill podcast. I'm Hilmarie Hutchison and I am so excited to have Kemsley Dickinson as my guest on the show today. Kemsley is renowned for building one of the most beautiful small theatres in the world, the Courtyard Playhouse. He pioneered the Keith Johnstone approach to improvisation in the Middle East, becoming the first member of the International Theatresports Institute in the region. Welcome, Kemsley, and thank you for joining me today.
Hilmarie, how are you?
I'm great, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. We were up rehearsing for a new kids show we're doing yesterday and an improvised musical. I'm sleeping till about midday at the moment, which is awful for the internal clock and the mental health and everything, right?
So things are a bit topsy-turvy for you right now.
Yeah, the shows start in February. So we have this big chunk in January of just rehearsing, and then we're pushed off the end of the cliff at the start of Feb.
Oh, wow. Well, thank you very much then for making the time for doing this recording today. I really appreciate that. Let's start with a little background about yourself. Can you please tell our audience a little bit about yourself and how you ended up here in the UAE?
I was a school teacher when I'm an old portly man now. I'm like 43, and when I was in my early 20s, I was a school teacher. I was teaching in some pretty rough schools in London, central London. It got to a point where I was just like, I'm not doing any good here because the discipline problems were so bad. There wasn't the structures in place in the schools to handle it. And there was sort of 30 kids plus in every class. And for me, class size is sort of everything. You know, smaller class size, you get to know the kids. And as soon as it gets above 20, it starts becoming really quite difficult. After a couple of years, I was like, sod this. And I just took the first job in the paper internationally. And I thought, I'll take a year out, reassess my life. And it was in a place called Sharjah, which is one of the provinces in the United Arab Emirates, one of the Emirates even, within the United Arab Emirates. It's the strict one as well, with the Sharia law and, really strictly applied and everything. So I went, well, okay, let's do it. And this was at the height of the sort of tensions in the Gulf as well, 2005. And I turned up at this school, this private school, to teach English. And it was great. It was just brilliant. The class sizes were sort of 15 kids and it was a nice small school. And I just ended up staying for 2 or 3 years. Then I thought, well, I'll do something with my life rather than just work. And I joined a drama group and then became head of the drama group and then started teaching a drama course and then opened a theatre and got married and had a kid. And so I've been in Dubai since 2005. So that's 20, that's 15, that's 16, that's nearly 17 years now, right?
That's amazing, right? That is such a typical story. We hear people who come for a couple of years to Dubai and then just falling in love with the place and just end up finding their spot and staying and never wanting to leave again. So that is pretty common. How did you get involved with the performing arts? Well, was it that drama or had you been involved with it before then?
I didn't care for it at all, but I was always trying to sort of gain attention at school, mainly from girls, probably. I ended up being a roofer, like putting on roofs in the freezing cold in Greenwich, in London, which is really tough work. My boss got on my nerves and went, I'm going to go to university. And the principal reason for this was I didn't want a job. I went to university and the only course that they had left was drama and theatre studies. I just went, I'll take that. I did a degree in drama and theatre studies and enjoyed it and thought, well, this seems a lot easier than doing a real job and a lot more fun. Then I sort of did shows in Europe, just bumming around as a teenager in early 20s, and then realised I didn't know what to do. So I became a teacher. So absolutely I didn't want to sort of be a performer from in the womb or any of that nonsense that anyone else says. I just fell into everything. Life, just sort of takes its course, and I didn't mean for any of this to happen.
So there was no strict charted course for you. It was all as it happens. You just went along with it. Lovely.
Yeah. I need some money. I need to do this. Yeah. Whenever I needed something, it's weird. Life just throws things up at you, doesn't it? At the right times. It's a strange one.
Exactly. And it works out well. So that's the positive. So let's talk about the Courtyard Playhouse. Why and how did that all come about?
a course called the Desert Monologues, which is the longest running acting course in the Middle East now. I was paying rent to this theatre, quite a lot of rent just to do it there. And so me and my wife were sort of like, should we go to the industrial area of Dubai, which when we opened sort of 10 years ago, there was nothing much there apart from industry. There's quite a lot of art galleries and cafes now. Or should we get a mortgage on a house? And so naturally, when we decided to go for a small warehouse in the industrial area of Dubai, my wife was delighted. She wasn't. And so we thought, let's just build our own theatre, work really hard and see what happens. And then, a month after we signed the contract, my wife, was pregnant. Are we allowed to call it mistake? That was unanticipated. So it was just real graft.
Unplanned for.
Yeah. Sorry, Arthur. If you listen, you're not a mistake. You're unplanned. And so it was hard graft. So that's how it came about. We didn't know if anyone had come to the first show, and it was packed, and it has been really ever since. So there was clearly a sort of a niche area there that wasn't being capitalized on.
A demand for it, a need for it, yes. Before we get into what's happening with the Courtyard Playhouse, let's just talk a little bit about business, because, of course, you went through the whole setting up of the business. From your experience, what do you think are some of the biggest challenges for entrepreneurs setting up business in the UAE?
It's expensive to start off with, as opposed to in South Africa, for instance, or the UK, where I think it costs something equivalent to a penny to sort of set up a business as regard to the licensing. So that's one of the hurdles. So you do need some capital to start off with. I borrowed mine we had about 70% of it. We borrowed the rest from my mum and dad, which was a bit embarrassing, and from some partners I asked to invest. You do need a bit more capital than you do elsewhere in the world if you want to sort of set up a premises. I think the hurdles we had would be very different from the hurdles everywhere else, because the nature of our business is a theatre. It's really the first independent one that's here. Sort of hurdles specific to that we had to circumvent.
And startup costs involved with setting it all up.
Yeah. The hardest thing is, if you're setting up your first businesses, you're going to make mistakes. And they're going to cost money.
Of course.
Right? And that's all part of the process. And you just have to be able to survive that spiritually and financially, because you're going to. There's no doubt about it. I built the theatre, and I'd never done any sort of building, anything like that before. I could do it now for half the cost with the amount of mistakes I made. For instance, I built the rake that people are supposed to sit on, and after a year, I had to smash it down and build it up with a metal frame instead of wood and stuff like that. I think you just have to be ready to make the mistakes and learn from them. But then when you build your second venue and you franchise or whatever, as you gain the experience, the value that comes back to you will compound, because you'll know a lot of stuff from the mistakes you made.
Exactly. As long as mistakes are fine, as long as you learn from them, right?
Yeah, as long as they don't cost too much. It's the only way you can look at mistakes. Otherwise, there's no value to them unless you learn from them. They're an absolute complete loss. But everyone's got to make them. So you have to resolve to learn from them.
Are there any tips that you would give to other startup entrepreneurs in terms of setting up their own business?
Yeah, try and find people to help you. They're generally willing, and they don't all charge anything sometimes, or an arm and a leg. So I'll give you a point in case. We had a partner who dropped on us on the last day. The day we were supposed to sign the lease on the place. We were like, well, oh, wow, what do we do now? The whole project, all this work's completely gone. I asked a couple of friends if they'd invest, and they came back to me and said yes. Just relying on people and not just trying to do the entire thing.
Yeah, reaching out to your network.
Yeah, I guess reaching out to your network. Yeah, don't try and do the whole thing on your own. That people will be able to give you advice and who've got more experience than you. And that's helpful to ask for help.
I think that's very valuable advice, a very good tip, because I've heard other people say the same thing. Don't rely on yourself. There are people out there that's willing to help you without charging you an arm and a leg for it. So where you can reach out to your community, your network, and get some support when you are starting out, I think that's very valuable.
Yeah, I'm in a position, sorry, just to expand on that, I had sort of capital then, and I have a little bit more now. And if someone came to me now and wanted some help or had a project, I would be so happy to sort of pay back the help that I was given in kind through either advice or consulting, or even possibly financially if I was interested in the project. So I think you'll be surprised how much people are willing to give if you are a good-natured person.
And willing to ask the question, right?
Yeah.
If you don't ask for help, no one's going to offer it. So be willing to ask for that help.
Some people view asking for help as a sign of weakness or failure. I started this project. I need a bit of help with it. It's like sort of, maybe it's not going as well as it should be. But, especially starting up a business is filled with all kinds of pitfalls that you won't expect. So, yeah, it's not in any way a sign of weakness to ask for a bit of help.
So I have to ask, you mentioned South Africa. So what is the story with South Africa?
South Africa. My I married a South African lady. She's from Johannesburg, Tiffany. She's the co-owner, actually, of the theatre. And so my son is half South African and half from Dubai. He's got a British passport and everything's weird in this new world we live in. We live in Cape Town, where you're from, I believe.
That's where I was born. Yes, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, the last few years, it's been a bit of a roller coaster. We had a Courtyard Playhouse in CBD in Cape Town, actually, with a bar and a restaurant. But COVID, a swift end to that because we opened it in January 2020.
Oh, what timing. My goodness. Yeah, you could not have had worse timing than that.
I mean, you literally couldn't. I mean, that was about 2 years' work, securing a lease of a heritage building in CBD and then outfitting a bar, restaurant and theatre. It took us 6 months to do the physical stuff and about a year and a half to do all the stuff to prepare. And it was closed within 3 months because of COVID, just closed. And after 7 months of being closed and still paying rent, we just had to go, well, what can you do? A hurricane might as well have come and picked it up and taken it away. So unfortunately, whilst we still live and flit in between Dubai and South Africa, our business there unfortunately closed because of COVID.
Oh, well, I'm sorry to hear that. That is so sad. Well, let's hope maybe after COVID is past, which it will come to an end. There's something to look forward to, maybe, on that front.
I think what else was a shame, it's probably a shame for community and particularly the theatre community in Cape Town because going to be a very active community theatre there, lots of, an academy for young people. And what is nice is we're still giving work to about 6 or 7 of the actors over there from Dubai. We procure work in Dubai and we outsource these guys because a lot of people want online, a lot of companies online consultation and stuff. So we're still able to give work. But the community in Dubai, the artistic community in Dubai has kind of been able to hang on by a thread and they're sort of coming back now. But still in South Africa, I mean, they're having a huge struggle in the film industry and I imagine music, stand-up comedy and theatre has been decimated. The Few God closed because of COVID completely for good.
Oh, wow. I did not know that. So it really has taken its toll.
Yeah, so it's a real shame that we've even got a couple of South African guys who've come over and they work with us now in the theatre who worked with us in the Cape Town branch. Maybe some positive stuff will come out of it, but it really sucked to be in theatre.
At this time, absolutely. And I am sorry that Tiffany's not on the podcast. I was hoping she would join us, but I know she's traveling. So maybe another time we can catch up with Tiffany.
She's really lovely and she's been there from day one. And obviously it's a different perspective. If you're thinking of building a theatre, you can't find a guide. There's no book on Amazon, how to build a theatre. I mean, it's rare.
You really have to learn as you go. Write your own playbook.
Yeah, love the pun, yeah.
So let's get back to the Courtyard Playhouse. From a concept of a small theatre, the Courtyard Playhouse has been redesigned with support from the community. Can you talk about that and how that happened?
It was redesigned with help from the community. Basically, we are a community-based theatre. People give up their time willingly just to be in a place that's full of people who are nice and good-natured and benevolent. And so if we've got like a painting that needs doing of the auditorium or the stage, or if we need tech or volunteers to help with sound and lights or playing on stage, they come in and do that. And so over the years, we've just built up this sort of community of people. And particularly in Dubai, where people are often away from their families, they come and find a new one with us at the theatre and it's cool.
That's lovely. Excellent. That sounds so good. They've found a new family in Dubai in something they enjoy doing.
Yeah, and that's their words, not ours. And it's not something we ever was part of the design. It just happened, especially with a lot of young people here as well. They find a different place where they can come and express themselves freely, and that's there. So there's a big focus on young people and their sort of development as human beings, as well as actors or comedians or artists.
I believe you pioneered the improvisation program in the theatre. Can you tell us about that and the impact it has had?
Yeah, so it was kind of like everything else I told you about. I didn't mean to. So I had this theatre that I built and it was like 2013 and I was like, oh my God, we can't put on plays every week. We'd have to pay the actors. We have to buy new set every time, new costumes, new props. I was like, there must be a way financially to recycle this stuff. I was like, I wonder if we can just make up plays every evening. Then I found this book and apparently you can just make up plays.
So there was a book for this?
Yeah, there's loads, but I read as many as I could get my hands on and a lot of them were a lot. But there was one in particular by a gentleman called Keith Johnstone, who's a British British guy who worked at the Royal Court Theatre and then was the artistic director of the Loose Moose in Calgary, I think, in Canada. It's a big place, but I think it was Calgary. And he pioneered this type of work. And so the actual formats where he devised that packaged improvisation in a way that it was a really good 2 hours entertainment for the general populace. And you did not need to be a professional actor or improviser to take part. For example, one of these is called Maestro. Another's called Theatresports, and it will just be 12 people on stage and they all get a number, and I might pull out the numbers 2 and 4 and I might say, okay, we challenge you to do a romantic scene. And then if they need help, they're directed, and we might bring out a table, play some music, and we might give them pointers along the way if they're stuck. And after they finish their scene, the audience will vote whether the scene gets a 1, 2, 3, 4 or 5. A 1 is rubbish, a 5 is amazing, yeah? And then after the couple of rounds, we eliminate the lowest scores. Next round, eliminate the lowest scores until one person's left, and it's the Maestro. And so it's this lovely anti-showbiz type of show that anyone can take part in. They won't get too stuck because directors will help them if they are, and the audience absolutely love it. And we've been doing that show now, Maestros, from 2013 every Wednesday, and it must be the longest running show probably in the world.
Wow, that's amazing. That's going on 9 years, 10 years next year. Amazing.
Yeah. So improvisation, and then we started thinking, well, could we improvise a Shakespeare? Could we improvise a musical or a Bollywood? And so we do all of that. So for instance, you can come anytime in February and watch us perform Sing It, the improvised musical, where we get a suggestion from the audience and we do a full musical based on that suggestion. Or we do a Bollywood show later in the year where we get someone from the audience and we give them a full Bollywood experience and they become the star of the show. And there's dancers around them and everything.
Oh my, that sounds brilliant. Can I come?
Yeah, it's brilliant. And I think Jane Austen we're going to be doing as well this year. And they always run for 6 weeks too. So you get lots of chances to come. Improvised Jane Austen's very funny. The characters come out in period costumes with baskets and you get to suggest alternative titles for a Jane Austen novel. So instead of Pride and Prejudice, it might be Schwammer's in Karama. And so we do a Jane Austen. We found a way financially to survive as a theatre, the only way, and to sort of improvise work. So that's how improvisation came about.
So in addition to that, you're also doing some development workshops. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. I think the performances now constitute about 8% of the revenue. It was 100% when we started. And now we've got an academy for kids, a huge training program. So there's 50 sort of kids classes. Parents do see the value in the arts here, in drama and in improvisation. We teach both. I think what sets us apart from the other training institutes here that offer kids workshops is our venue. It's beautiful. Have you been to it?
Unfortunately, no, but I have to absolutely. I'll make a special trip to go and see it for sure. I have not seen it.
You walk into the courtyard, it's opposite Bounce in Alcus 1. You walk into Easy to Park, you walk into the courtyard and it's just there's trees and green everywhere and stuff. And then there's a beautiful cafe where you can sit outside and inside. And then you walk into the foyer and it's red and plush and there's curtains and it feels lovely and very different. It's so warm and there's always wooden floors, it's not, so it's everything away from sort of an industrialized kind of learning environment. It feels homely. That's really what we wanted. It doesn't feel like a school or a hospital or a mall. It feels like walking into somewhere that's warm and inviting. And so on top of the kids and adults program, we do an adults program as well for people who just want to dip their toes into doing improv or improve their public speaking. It's going so well here this year. Yesterday, we had 6 full classes of our adult workshop, which is called Don't Panic, which is to do with the fear of public speaking or being in front of people and sort of expressing yourself. 6 full adult classes, which is
amazing.
Yeah, that's the most ever. And then, what happened was, on top of the teaching that we would do, corporate companies would come and see the shows and they'd just say, hey, how did you do that? And we'd say, we'd explain there's a methodology behind creating something collaboratively, because they can't believe you've just improvised a show from nothing with no script. And they say, can you teach my team to do that? And so we were like, okay. About 7 years ago, we gave it a go. And since then, it's a huge part of our business. We do Google and Twitter and all the multinational techs, and we do pharmaceutical and automotive, and that's a huge part of the business. So we have a corporate wing, youth academy, an adult training centre, and the shows as well. This thing grew from a small warehouse project, one of the most dynamic small theatres in the world.
Congratulations. That is absolutely brilliant how well it's done.
Yeah.
Excellent. And you haven't stuck just to the one thing. You have sort of gone wherever the things took you, wherever there was a need. You saw it and you took hold of it, which is brilliant. Well done.
And isn't it interesting from a business perspective? This was not in the plan. We just followed our passion and we said, well, let's take a small risk here, a measured risk, if it doesn't work. And the business grew organically in all of these different areas without us trying. I don't know if that's commonplace in other business areas, but I am presume it is. So you will have to be flexible with your roadmap from a business perspective as it comes along.
Yes, exactly. Be willing to change, because things are changing all the time. So if you're willing to make those changes, go with the flow, whatever's needed. Find the gap, or notice the gap and take it, make the most of it, which is what you've done by the sounds of things. Excellent. So you've accomplished a lot already. My goodness. What's new? What's on the horizon? Is there anything new you're talking about, or is that anything new on the cards right now?
Yeah, well, we're still reeling from COVID, honestly, financially and emotionally, after losing our first sort of expansion outside the country. We've got some really exciting stuff coming up this year. We have our 10-year anniversary, so that's next year. But this year we have some international guests coming over. So there's a guy called Sean Kinley, this wonderful, some of the best improvisers in the world come over here and teach. He's doing an intensive. So we're looking forward to a lot of guests. We're looking forward to our 10-year anniversary festival and planning that. I think that I'm honestly most excited about this year is our team. So we've got a team of about 20 full-time and about 10 part-time and freelancers and stuff. And they are so capable. They are young, capable, intelligent. And I'm just so excited to see what they can do this year. I really like to take a back seat. I don't want to do any work anymore. Done my bit, right?
Sounds good.
Yeah, but they are just a great bunch of really capable young people, all highly motivated. I'm really happy to sort of hand over the baton, if you like, of it to this group of young people and see what make of it, see how they can develop the, not just the business, but the whole, soul of the place.
The concept, yeah.
Yeah, and you'll like this. Because of COVID, my family stayed in South Africa, right? So my wife and son, after they're in South Africa, so we've got this long-term marriage thing that goes on now. Because there's no jobs in South Africa, so I couldn't stay there. I came back to sort of Dubai. I think I'd like to go back and live with my family at some point.
That'd be nice. I'm sure they'd appreciate that.
It's funny you say that. Yesterday, the flights opened up from South Africa. It's the first time in 5 months. So I haven't seen my little boy in 5 months because of the flights, but they opened yesterday. I think as a theatre, we've always been quite philanthropic. We adopt gorillas. So we've got a few Rwandan gorillas, rehomed over 100 cats in the last 12 months. And we have cat days and stuff because there's so many cats. But I think really what I'd like to do in the future is something with stray dogs in Cape Town. And we're trying to work out whether there can be some link between the theatre here and something in Cape Town, because I like dogs. Maybe the stray dog theatre or something like that.
That sounds excellent. You've got some ideas, something you can work on and see where that takes you next. That sounds brilliant.
Yeah, some very loose ideas, but I like dogs and I'll try and do something with dogs.
Well, thank you so much for what you've shared with us so far. That's been very interesting. It's amazing where your journey has taken you so far. Now we've come to the segment of our show where I'd like to ask you a few rapid fire questions. So our version of a game show. Since I'm speaking to the master of improv, this will not be a problem. So the first thing that pops in your head, what is one thing on your bucket list?
Honestly, if it's truthfully, however boring it is, I'd really like to spend more time with my kid, because I know there must be parents listening to this. You can sort of chase money and all that stuff, but you can never get time back. And sort of COVID's been a bit of makes you recognize that time is sort of more important than you probably give it stock to. Sorry, this is rapid, isn't it? So I'll be quiet.
No, continue. No, we enjoy it. Go on.
When people are on their deathbeds, which is kind of macabre, they say, hey, we interviewed them and said, what would they change about their life? And one of the things they always say is, I would have worked less and spent more time with my kids. And so I think people, that stage of their life, are worth listening to. So I'm trying to do that more now.
Yes, very good. And how old is your son, if I may ask?
He is 8. So he's at those formative years as well.
Oh, lovely. So good time to spend with him if you can. Absolutely. Who would be one guest that you would like to invite for dinner cooked by you?
Oh, wow. Hitler would be interesting, but probably not popular. I'd sort of ask him, hey, what was all that about? Adolf. I'm a really big fan of history. We do a lot of improvised history. Julius Caesar would be great. I'd ask him about the conquest of Gaul, which I think is wonderfully exciting. So yeah, it'd be one of those two. It wouldn't be Hitler. I'd quite like to meet Julius Caesar. Stephen Sondheim would also be up there. We've had a picture of him at the theatre for the last month since he passed away, and, the most wonderfully talented playwright. Yeah, so there you go. There's three people: Stephen Sondheim, Hitler, and Julius Caesar. Yeah,
Julius Caesar. A mixed bag. Very good. What is one thing you wish you knew when you started your career? Well, a career as such.
One thing I wish I knew when I started my career, what I wanted to do. Now, I'm not necessarily giving that advice to young people that you should, but I was really directionless and life just imposed itself on me. And I think in a lot of ways, people who know what they want to do from an early age are at a massive advantage because they can gear their studies in that direction. But everything I was really interested in, I'm rubbish at. I really like physics. I'd love to be a wonderful a nuclear physicist or something like that. Rubbish at it. Crafts, I love crafts. Rubbish at it. It might have been nice to have a single goal to work towards. Not necessary, but be interested to see what would have happened.
And last question. What is one thing you do every day, no matter how busy you are?
Take nicotine tablets. I do. I've been on these nicotine lozenges, right, for about 13 years. I've given up smoking sort of over a decade ago, and I can't kick the 2 milligram nicotine lozenges. And so I'm trying this year. So wherever I am, I'm sucking one now. I've got a sort of packet of nicotine lozenges, and I thought I was alone in that, but now I know there are loads of fellow addicts, chewing gum and everything. We've been doing it for like a decade. So we've got to kick it. It's not as bad as smoking, but we've got to kick it.
That's an interesting answer to that question. I've never heard that, but very good.
So they normally say coffee or something like that.
No, like one important thing you do every day, like pray or meditate or brush your teeth or make your bed.
No. Well, I do this latter two, but no, nicotine.
Now, before we wrap up, we would like to do our green pill moment. So for this segment, I'd like to ask you this question. Could you share an inspiring or life-changing experience that you've gone through, your green pill moment?
There's a lot, and I haven't got a standout one, so I'll just pick one. When I was training to be a teacher, I was massively underqualified. I didn't know how apostrophes worked or anything because I just messed around at school. I basically just blagged this job as an English teacher at a very good school in England. My first job. The other teaching staff quickly realised that they had a buffoon on their on their books. But instead of calling me out, an old lady who spoke Latin, whose name was Jenny Young, took me aside and said, "You clearly don't know what you're doing, do you?" And I said, "No." Instead of sort of grassing me up and getting me fired, she took me aside and taught me how to do punctuation and an hour, sort of a couple of times a week, gave me reading lists. And just that act of kindness by someone else for no reason that they should have done it was a bit of a moment for me. And again, I think paying back those kind of benevolent acts that people do for one another, even if the other person's in the wrong, make a difference. So I guess Jenny Young, I assume, has passed away now because she's quite old then, would be my green pill moment.
Wow, what an amazing story. Amazing that someone would give that much back to you, like you say, without calling you out, without trying to get you fired, but to actually genuinely just try and help you.
Yeah, apparently she was a cow to everyone else as well.
Oh, wow. But still, she saw something in you.
I never got to ask her, but yeah.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for sharing your inspiring story with us today. You've certainly accomplished a lot. I'm so sure our audience is going to enjoy this conversation as much as I have. And I'm sure our audience is going to be inspired by you and the advice that you've given. So thank you very much for that. Before we say goodbye, could you please tell our listeners where they can find and follow you? And we'll also put this in the show notes.
So we are the theatre at we call the Courtyard Playhouse. We're in a big complex, outdoor complex sounds bad, a nice place called the Courtyard, and that's opposite Bounce in Al Kuzwan. Obviously, you can find us on Google by typing in Courtyard Playhouse. I'm not very good on the social media stuff because I've got someone else who does that. I'm rubbish. So that's about all the info I can give you. Look us up on the website. You'll find everything.
And on your website, and we will put your links to your social media also.
Oh, that's very kind. Thank you.
But thank you again for joining me today. It's been an excellent conversation, and I wish you all the very best, and I'll be watching and seeing where you go next.
That's excellent. I'll see you at a show.
If you enjoy our conversations, please like and subscribe. See you next Wednesday.